South by Southwest, where the world's headed.
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Aduca. I head the Startups, Tech Industry, and Game Industry tracks at South by Southwest. First, we have a few notes. We are running our audience Q&A in this room via Slido. You can find this by opening the South by Southwest Go app and clicking the Engage button to ask questions. Also tonight, we have our interactive opening party at 8 p.m. at the Palm Door on 6th Street. Now, we at South by Southwest always want to create an environment that advances the spirit of entrepreneurship, and Kendra Scott has done just that. From building her eponymous global brand to the opening of the Kendra Scott Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership Institute at the University of Texas, she continues to support and empower female entrepreneurs, which is why it gives me immense pleasure to welcome senior reporter at CNBC's Make It, Jennifer Liu, in conversation with founder, author, philanthropist, entrepreneur, Kendra Scott.
All right.
So fun. Hi, Austin. Those of you not from Austin, welcome to our city.
All right, well, welcome everyone to our panel about how to differentiate yourself as an entrepreneur. About 55% of adults have started a business at some point in their lives, and small businesses account for 99% of all businesses in the US. Being an entrepreneur is difficult enough, so how can you differentiate yourself from the scores of other well-intentioned next great ideas? This session will reveal how to succeed as an entrepreneur by learning from past failures, finding what makes you unique, and thinking like an entrepreneur at all times. My name is Jennifer Liu, and I'm a senior reporter with CNBC Make It. Please join me in welcoming again our featured speaker, Kendra Scott, the founder, executive chairwoman, and chief creative officer of the Kendra Scott Jewelry and Accessories brand.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
Right, so we are going to start off by taking a little trip in our time machine, going back to the 90s. You've built Kendra Scott over the last 22 years to become a $1 billion brand, but it wasn't your first foray into entrepreneurship. So can you tell us about your first business and what you learned from running it?
Yeah, I think as even, being young, I always had this thing where I was wanting to create things or sell things or do things. It was always like a part of me. I had this little fire, burning inside of me. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted it to be. And I was drawn to my aunt, who was a fashion director at a little department store in Milwaukee, Wisconsin called Gimbel's. Many of you will not know what that is because it was probably way earlier than any of your time. But she was fashion director, and at that time, there were very few women actually holding the role of a fashion director for a department store for women's clothing. Men were buying women's clothes. They were the directors buying women's clothes. But here was this little dynamic woman who started as a sales associate on the floor and worked herself up to director. And so she gave me this bug, Jennifer, of like the fashion bug. And why she gave it to me is because when I would go into her closet and I'd put on her clothes and she'd share with me the slides from Milan and Paris, I wasn't this little girl from Kenosha, Wisconsin. I could be anybody I wanted to be. And fashion was magic to me. And I was just like, I want to give this feeling that I have when I'm with her, around her, to everyone. And so I knew that was my childhood dream, literally. And I don't know how many people in the world can grow up and say they actually are living their childhood dream. But I'm one of those people. And when I was in high school, my stepfather, who is a 2-tour Vietnam veteran, amazing man, he spoke 5 languages fluently, was diagnosed with brain cancer. And at that moment, my entire world changed. Everything that I thought was important as a high schooler suddenly completely went in another direction because all we cared about as a family was how are we going to try to save this person that we love so much. But it also drove me to my passion of fashion. I would be at MD Anderson with him. You think, how is fashion related to brain cancer? Well, for me, I would meet men and women undergoing chemotherapy, and I would see that there was a need for comfortable headwear. So I was creating headwear options, sewing cotton linings inside of hats that I had at home, and I would bring them to MD Anderson and gift them to some of the men and women that I would meet. And I thought, why aren't there more hat stores out there? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And so I thought, here I am, 19 years old, I drop out of college, and I'm gonna start a business. I'm gonna start a hat company. And at that point, I think, there's maybe some 19-year-olds in this room, but you're an idealist. I wanted to do something bigger than myself. And I wanted to use what I loved from a little girl, which was fashion, to do something good, which was design these hats. So I opened a hat store right here in Austin, Texas, and it was called the Hatbox, which, by the way, there is still a Hatbox here. It's not mine. She took the name over, which tells you something. I mean, that's good. But I started the Hatbox, and I literally, had these big dreams of it becoming a units, like 100 stores or more, maybe $1 billion brand. I thought people would wear hats again like it's 1940. I was gonna bring it back. How many of you in this room today are wearing an actual hat? A cap does not count, an actual hat. Okay, that is exciting. There are 3 of you in this room. What you can see, though, in that is the majority of you did not raise your hand, which leads you to why I had my first failure. That business did not take off. People did not start wearing hats again like it was 1940, but I had 5 years of running that little retail store. And for me, even though I had dropped out of college, it became the best education I could have ever asked for. It was a master's in the School of Hard Knocks. And it truly showed me what I needed to learn to be able to start the next business that I didn't know was around the corner, that I actually was afraid to start.
Yeah, so you mentioned you ended up closing the Hatbox after 5 years. How do you know when it's time to let go of a business or an idea?
When you stop being able to afford top ramen as your meal of choice, that's usually a good indication that maybe things are going south. You know what I'm saying? And by the way, my kids still love ramen. The square package ones are like 35 cents. I can't. I smell it and I almost break out into hives. I'm like, oh God, this is too familiar. I think for me, it was very much that. It was like I was trying so hard every single day to make this work. And I was doing it not just to try to have a business, but I was doing it for my stepfather. I thought, this is one thing I can do for him. And I was wanting to give money back to cancer research. I was wanting to bring smiles to people's faces that were going through this terrible disease. And when it was failing, I just remember thinking, I can't let this fail. I have to figure out how to make this work. But no matter what I did, I started in the mall. I couldn't afford the mall, so then I moved into a strip center next to a grocery store. They tell you location matters. I obviously didn't get that memo back then. I made a lot of mistakes. But at the same time, I finally got to the point where I knew I just couldn't keep sustaining this. I was working 7 days a week. I couldn't afford any help. My mom would come in and help me from time to time. And I had to finally take the look and be like, you know what? The courageous thing to do is not to continue to keep it open. The courageous thing to do is to know when it's time to sometimes say goodbye to something. And when I closed that store, Jennifer, I'll never forget it, as long as I live, I had one of those really cheap signs you buy at like the Home Depot that said, sorry, we're closed, and on the other side it said, yes, we're open. And I closed it, turned it around, the sorry, we're closed for the last time. And I had moved, all the fixtures had been moved out that day, everything, the store was clear. And I was an emotional wreck. And at that point, I had lost my stepfather to cancer. I was now a college dropout with no degree. All of my friends had graduated. I was in debt beyond words could imagine. And I remember walking outside crying. I know it's hard for you to imagine this, but I'm a little dramatic. And I walked out just crying and sobbing and looking at that, thinking, oh, the sign, the drama of it. And I look around and the stupid sign says, yes, we're open. And I'm like, wait, no, I turned it. I went through the whole thing. And then I'm sitting there on the curb next to the grocery store as people are wheeling their carts by me. And I start looking at it and it says, yes, we're open. And I'm like, wait. Yes, we're open. Yes, we're open. This is an actual sign, Jennifer, okay? This isn't just a sign. It was a sign, stay open. And I remember my stepfather, all the conversations we had before he passed of, honey, you're going to come through things in your life that are so hard. You're going to have failures in front of you. You're going to take missteps. That's part of life. But what I want to tell you on the other side of that, there is something great waiting for you. And you have to push through the doors of fear and be open to the next thing that's going to happen in your life. And I remembered those words, and I looked at that sign, and I said, okay, I'm going to stay open. And a few years later, I started Kendra Scott, and all those lessons, those nuggets of information that I learned in running that store were truly the foundation to set me up for a successful business.
Yeah, so along those lines, within a few years, you were working on your jewelry line. Were you ever worried that your previous failure of having to close the Hatbox was an indicator that you weren't ready or weren't prepared to launch a new business? How did you rebuild that confidence?
That's a great question because I have to be really honest about it. When I started Kendra Scott Jewelry, one of the reasons I did was because customers from my hat store were calling me. Well, not for the hats. I was actually making jewelry in that little store, and it would sell out the day I'd put it on the counter. But I was so determined that the hat thing had to work that I wasn't paying attention to what was actually working. And so I was making jewelry kind of on the side. I had to go get a job, folks. I mean, I'm not a Rockefeller, okay? I had to pay my rent. I sold my car, and I was working in a job, and I was doing jewelry on the side. And I thought, I got married, and we got pregnant fairly quickly with our first son, and I was like, maybe there's a chance that I could try the jewelry thing. But I was so scared. My best friends, a couple of them are here in this audience tonight, and they remember this. I had a card table in my extra bedroom of my house and a little bead board, and I was making these pieces, and they were my first customers. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And I remember not wanting to tell anybody. They were so proud of me, and my friends, my family were like, you need to sell these. You need to do stuff with this. I was like, no, I'm going to I had lost that confidence. I had lost the confidence in myself, and I didn't want anyone to know I was starting a new business because I thought I'd be laughed at. I thought people would be like, oh, there she goes again, that loser, Kendra Scott. You saw what happened with the Hatbox, And so I literally was very quiet in the beginning until I started seeing that other people had confidence in me. And I say this in my book, Born to Shine, that being a light, we have this light in us, and sometimes it dims. Sometimes things happen to us and we lose that confidence, we lose that brilliance. But when you surround yourself with people that can see it, and then you see it in their eyes, that gives you the confidence to keep trying. And it was my family, it was my friends, it was the people in my life that lifted me out of that helped me have the confidence to try again. And I think that's such an important lesson for everyone. No matter what it is you're doing in your life, whether it's a business or whatever, surround yourself with people that see your light. And if you surround yourself with that, not the people that are looking for ways there's so many jewelry designers. Why are you going to do it? What's going to make you special? You know those people. I had those people in my life. Not anymore. I don't. You got to surround yourself with people that see your light.
Well, on that note, there's no shortage of places to buy jewelry, and retail is a very...
You're sounding kind of like that, Jennifer. No.
Well, retail is a very competitive space, but as you were starting your jewelry line, how did you know that you had a viable business opportunity and that you were uniquely suited to take it on?
So I think there's a couple things with that. One, being a retailer, I was buying hats from other designers, and they would ship me their hats, and they were like, good luck, sweetheart. Hope you sell them. If you don't, I don't really care. You're paying me regardless, right? I got no follow-ups. Nobody really cared. And I thought, if I'm going to be a designer and sell to other people, I want to be everything that I didn't receive as a retailer, because I felt how hard that was. So I made sure if something wasn't selling for one of my retailers, I was going to replace it with something. If that's not working, let me put something else in. Let's retry it. Let me come in and help you with your merchandising. Maybe we can help, how we're doing it. Can I come in and do a trunk show? I'd love to meet your customers firsthand. I'd love to build a relationship with them. It's hustle. It doesn't happen by magic. It happens because you put the effort in, you get the effort out. And there wasn't other jewelry designers out there doing that. The customer service I was providing to our stores was unparalleled. And the designs that I was choosing to do were different. I wanted to create semi-precious, beautiful colored gemstones in unique shapes and designs. And everyone else's jewelry, they were just trying to look like everyone else. If it was the wood bead trend, we all remember that one, they were all doing wood beads, right? I wanted to do things in my own unique way, where I was disruptive in this category of jewelry. But yet, thinking about fashion and fine jewelry, you had very inexpensive jewelry that would fall apart, that was made of plastic. Then you had bridge jewelry, which was more expensive, and I couldn't afford that jewelry as a single mom. That's another story. I became single as a single mom. And so I thought, I wanted to create something in that white space. And so I think when you're thinking about your business, if you're doing what your competitors are doing, and which I've seen so many designers before me fail, is they just try to do, because that guy did it, ooh, I should do that. That guy did it, I gotta do that. You're done. You're dead in the water. You're not going to make it. You have to use your own unique fingerprint. You have to be disruptive, and you have to absolutely destroy them on customer service. Destroy them. Not, I'm going to do wow customer service. No, I want to know what you're doing, and I'm going to do it 1 million times better. And every single day you have to do it, not just when you start your business. You have to know your competitive landscape. You have to understand what they're doing. You have to wake up every morning and never be complacent. You have to say, how am I going to surprise and delight my customer today? I have to get out of my office and I go into the stores. I get on customer service calls. I want to interact with them and connect with them one-on-one, and that is how we learn, and I think that's so important for every entrepreneur to hear.
Right, so you first started selling your jewelry by selling directly to local store owners. Then you went from selling wholesale to direct-to-consumer in your stores. Throughout that period, how did you figure out what your target market was? And did you ever miss the mark?
So that's funny, because after the Hatbox, I said, I will never be in retail again. Never. That was scary stuff, you guys, scary stuff. I have 136 stores, okay? So never say never is the lesson there, right? But I did. I was so scared to be in retail. So for the first 8 years of running my business, 7 to 8 years, I was strictly wholesale. I'd sell to other stores, other big department stores like Nordstrom, and it was nice. I was building a nice business. I was able to eat other food than ramen. Those were bonuses. But I would go out and I would try to get investment capital. Nobody would invest in me. I was a single mom. It was very, very difficult. But at the same time, I was so passionate about what we were doing. I was so excited about what we were doing. But none of it was easy. None of it was, trying to do something that was like innovative or really like, I know my customer. I was literally making pieces that I wanted that I couldn't find. And you think about like Sarah Blakely and other people, you hear this often. Usually the most successful entrepreneurs are selfish. She wanted to look good in a white skirt, so she cut off her pantyhose, right? And so she would be like slimmed down. it came that a lot of women wanted that same thing, right? And so many times it's when we need something that we can't find that the best ideas come about. But when I started to build it, I realized after 8 years of doing wholesale, the recession hit. And I had all my eggs in one basket. And it was a really scary time because buyers I had worked with were getting laid off. Boutiques that I had worked with for several years were shuttering, and I knew I had no connection to the direct consumer. I was letting all these other people sell my jewelry for me. And that was a huge mistake, that I needed to be the one to have a direct connection to my consumer. And in 2009, I came to our team and I said, we're completely changing our business model. We are focusing on direct to consumer. We are going to create an e-commerce website that is unique, that has a customization tool to it so the customer can get involved in the design process. It's called Color Bar. This was before Nike ID. I think they stole my idea. But anyway, I wanted to do all these fun things, and we opened our first retail store when all over Austin stores were shuttering on South Congress. I mean, literally, it was like vacancy, 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 opening soon, Kendra Scott. And people were like, this woman is out of her bloody mind, right? But that was the thing for me, is I wanted to hear from her directly. And we did this, and we were like, if we're gonna do this, I wanna design a jewelry store that is everything I would dream of a jewelry store to be. I hated shopping for jewelry. I would walk into jewelry stores, and I'm not talking fine jewelry stores, bridge jewelry stores. I'm not gonna name any names, but other ones, and they were all behind glass, and there would be these very snotty people in there. And I'd walk in, sweaty, after a run or something, and they'd look at me all judgy, And I'd be like, hi, can I see that piece of jewelry? And they'd be like, And it's this whole process to get this one $300 necklace out. And I'm like, okay. And they're showing it to me, and I just remember feeling small, and I was embarrassed to try to act for something else, and it was a scary experience. So when we opened ours, it was jewelry would be freely displayed, no under glass. We do have diamonds under glass now, you can understand why. But freely displayed. We wanted people to be interactive. We created the Color Bar where you could come and design your own. And we had lines out the store. And we realized then exactly who our demographic was. It was a customer type, not an age. We had women and girls from 12 years old to 80 years old. We had multi-generations shopping together who all were able to find something, but they shared a similar core value. They loved the color, they were bold, they loved fashion, they loved design. They had a heart that beated for their community. We were all about giving back from day one at Kendra Scott, and they cared very much about that, and it resonated. And literally from that first store to the next store, we created community. And that was a big difference marker for us and continues to be as a brand.
Yeah, well, speaking of community, your company is so deeply rooted in Austin. And I know early on you got a lot of feedback that to really thrive, you should really be based in New York or LA. So what were the challenges of working from Austin, not being in those markets? And what can business owners in a similar situation learn from that today?
Yeah, I love telling this story, especially here in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest. But I started my company in 2002. And in 2004 or 5, I went to New York City to do the accessory circuit. And literally, there are these brands, and they have huge production companies. I mean, they have all these people setting things up, a trolley. I can't explain to you. It's me and 2 of my girls, and we were making a wood floor, hammering it in. I mean, it was we had no money. And we built this thing, and we put our jewelry up. We were exhausted. We had cuts all over our hands from setting up all the stuff. And these, buyers and editors would come through the accessory circuit, and this big-time editor of a very big-time magazine came through, and she was accessories editor. She's like, "Oh my God, who are you? I love this." And I said, "Oh, I'm Kendra Scott." She's like, "You look so different. I mean, everyone else is, really looking the same." I was like, "Thank you." And she's like, "When did you start? Where are you? Where are you from? LA? Are you from New York?" That was my options. I said, "No, I'm from Austin, Texas." And she was like, "Austin, Texas? oh, you really are going to need to move to one of the coast cities if you ever want to make it in fashion. And I looked at her and I said, but Austin's part of the DNA of my brand. And she said, that's cute, but that's not going to matter. You got to be here to get the resources you need, blah, blah, blah. And I just didn't believe it because I lived in this city. And I knew the magic before the whole world knew the magic of this town, but it's this creative hub of music and film. It's a vibrant community of entrepreneurs that lift each other up and support each other. I was in the absolute best place on the planet to start a business and to start a business in fashion. And what's funny is that same accessories editor, and she doesn't know this is why I don't bring this up, like tell who it is. 4 years later, she's calling me and asking me, Kendra, can you do an article with me and tell me the jewelry trends for this season? 2008. She goes, can you tell me what the trends are in jewelry? She asked the girl from Austin, Texas, who wasn't supposed to make it. But that's a good sign of when you think about it, the things that make your brand true, the things that make your company true are your story, and it doesn't belong to anybody else. Austin is part of who I am. It's part of the influence of my design. It's part of what makes this brand so beautiful and great. And so if I took that out of the equation, I would not be sitting here with you today. So people will tell you all sorts of things that you can and cannot do, that you should or shouldn't do. You have to listen to yourself and stay true to who you are, because what's going to separate you and your company is one thing. You, unique individual, that there is no one else on this planet but you. Don't let anyone ever take that away from you or tell you that you should be something you're not.
Very well said. Now, you mentioned investors earlier, so let's circle back to that topic. Raising capital is tricky for any entrepreneur, but it's especially tough for women who only get roughly 2% of venture funding. What do you know about raising capital today that you wish you knew on day one?
Gosh, I think it's a different world today. We're still vastly underinvested as women, right? One of the reasons why I founded the Kendra Scott Women's Entrepreneurial and Leadership Institute is to really start changing that dynamic around female founders and female founders getting the opportunities and investments that they so deserve. I'm excited because in the last 4 years, I'm just going to toot my own horn real quick, or toot the University of Texas's horn, is that we have already founded 66 female founders in just 4 years, which is amazing, amazing. Saying that, though, we have a lot of work to do. When I started, there was this amazing, 2002, if any of you, some of you may be born in 2002 in this room. But for those of you out there, it was really, and I laugh when sometimes I say this, but like the internet was really just getting going, okay? I know right now we're talking about AI and we're all not really even gonna be here in a few years, and we're gonna have AI robots doing this. But in 2002, folks, we didn't have the access to social groups, to opportunities to meet and learn, get people that we would meet outside of our little network. I was in a women's networking group that would just meet here in Austin, and that was who I was able to network with. I mean, we didn't have access to the world. We have access to the world now, and we're seeing so many women getting into finance, getting into private equity, women who are wanting to back other companies like myself. So it's such an exciting time, I think, for female entrepreneurship, and I think it's an exciting time in general for entrepreneurship. I look at the generation behind me, that I'm getting to teach at the University of Texas, and I'm blown away every day. The inspiration, the excitement, the passion, the drive to want to not just do good for themselves, but do good for the world is unbelievable, and we have so much to be excited for. We've got some great folks behind us that are ready to take on the world, and we just need to give them the power and the fuel to do it.
So as you've built your business, you've made a concerted effort to help other women entrepreneurs, but it can oftentimes feel like helping women in business falls on other women in business. And as we've mentioned, there are already so few of them. What would you like to see from the larger investing world to bridge that gap?
Well, I agree and disagree with that in some regards, because I think there's also amazing men in our lives that lift us up. I was raised by a father who I write about a lot in my book, who I don't know if it was for him, I would be here also. I mean, he told me, honey, you can be anything you want to be. There is nothing in this world that is too big for you to go after. He never told me that I wasn't able to do this or I couldn't do that. And I think having these men in our life that help lift us up is really important. I've had men in my life. My first investor, who I call my bonus dad, was a mentor to me for many, many years. He had many successful businesses, took a few public, and he was the first one to actually say those words. Kendra, I want to invest in you. And I was like, what? I've not been familiar with this sentence before. He believed in me, and his belief in me helped me then continue to raise and rise my company. So I think this is a concerted effort between men and women, right? It's good for the entire world, for all of us to lift women up. Our daughters, our sisters, our wives, our friends. The whole world will benefit from this. We know that female founders and female leaders, I hate to say it, guys, but they're just a little bit better at it. They have a better success rate. They do. I love you guys. We're very empathetic. We're very thoughtful leaders. You guys can learn from these female leaders. But I think it's so important that we make this more of a unified thing. And I have to tell you, there are so many men, even on Shark Tank. You look at Mr. Wonderful, Mark Cuban, all the buddies I get to sit beside. They adore and love to invest in female founders. They love it. And I think we're seeing that tide changing and shifting. And I think we're seeing it even in the corporate, workplace, where our male leaders, there used to be such a glass ceiling for women. There's still a lot of work we got to do, ladies. I'm not saying we've broken through it completely. I wish I could. But we're getting there, and because we're getting there because men are helping us get there as well, and we need to recognize that's very important.
A key part of your brand from the very beginning is that you do good through philanthropic efforts. Now, businesses have adopted values around giving back, and it's become rather trendy in more recent years. So how do you communicate your mission to consumers in a way that feels genuine and not a good marketing strategy?
So this is I'm going to hope I can get everyone in here to get with me on this one. This is the best question of the whole thing that you've asked me today. Kendra Scott, my first business that failed, I started because I wanted to do something that would make people feel good. My stepfather, who died at age 47, told me, honey, use the gifts you were given to do something good, to make an impact in a positive way. You have a very, very short time on this earth, very short. So while we're here, make it count. Make it count. And so for me, after the Hatbox failed, I knew for me to think of success, I wanted it to be purpose-driven. I wanted a fashion for philanthropy brand. This is, again, I didn't have any money, y'all. I was baroque, okay? Baroque. But what could I do in that moment? I could make a pair of earrings for a silent auction for a nonprofit. I could make a necklace for a raffle. I decided that any nonprofit that would call me, I would never say no. I could do that. I could give my time. That was free, so to speak, right? I could give my time. But then as the company grew, I opened a store. I could host Kendra Gives Back events, and I could bring people from the community in. We could share things that we wanted to do together and support that organization. And we shared in the event sales, and I was able to give that back. Then we were able to build more programs like Kendra Cares in pediatric hospitals, where we brought our color bar to pediatric patients so they could get a little bit of joy. We'd gift them a necklace that they could help design, or they could make one for their mom or their favorite nurse. We started at MD Anderson, ironically. We built the program with them. We're now in 42 hospitals. So my message there to all of you is you don't have to make this big thing. Oh, we're not ready to be philanthropic yet. We don't have the extra money. We're barely able to figure it out. Do what you can when you can. And let this be a core pillar of your business, because the people you attract, that care about more than just themselves, more than just, the dollar, right? You're going to have the most hardworking, loving, amazing humans on the planet working for you. And so, Kendra Scott, this was just what mattered to me. It was a one-man show in the beginning. And then I hired 2 and 3 and 4, and now we're up to 3,000 something. And we all share this core value. The priority for us at Kendra Scott and how we measure success is how we can make an impact. And now we've been able, since 2010, to give $65 million to women and children's causes. You guys, that started out of a bedroom, right? I mean, so I tell young entrepreneurs, all the time, don't feel like you have to do it all today. Do what you can, grow with your organization, bring your people in to allow them to be part of how this happens, hire on your core values, and watch out what the world is going to happen. If we all had that mindset, it would be amazing.
Now, speaking of the brand, Kendra Scott, there can be pressure, an outsized pressure on women founders to be the name and the face of their brand. How do you figure out if that's the right move for your company? Like, does it make it difficult to differentiate Kendra Scott the brand from Kendra Scott the person? Does it change how you make decisions for the company or for your personal life?
It's really funny because people say, how did you come up with this decision to name your company your name? And I laugh because, again, I told you I was scared to start another company. So I didn't name it anything. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to name my brand Jazzy Jewels or something, I was like, I made a business card from WordPerfect. I printed it out. I cut it out. And it said Kendra Scott, because that's my name, you guys. Jewelry designer. That was it. So I was just a person selling jewelry. And then as, buyers started to hear, and I had it started because there was a showroom in Dallas, Texas, who their stores were stopped buying the product that she was selling because they were buying from this girl, Kendra Scott, out of Austin, Texas. And she called me, her name was Julie, and she's like, are you Kendra Scott? Kind of aggressive. I was like, yes, can I sell you something? And she's like, you're selling to all my accounts in Austin. What are you doing that's so special? And I said, I don't know, do you want to see? She's like, come on up to Dallas and show me what you've got. So she started selling. She goes, so your company name's Kendra Scott? I guess so. Sure. Yeah, it's Kendra Scott. That's it. So it became Kendra Scott Design. I added the design to it to make it feel a little more, legit. Now we're just Kendra Scott, LLC. I decided I could let go of the design, that I could just be me and be good with that. But no, it is, some days it's funny because a lot of people don't know that there's a human behind the brand. In Texas, in certain markets, people refer to the brand as she and her. In other places, it's they don't know. It's just a brand. I mean, I could be like Ann Taylor. Do you know she doesn't exist? That wasn't a real person. There's a lot of brands out there that are just a name. So I take it as a very big responsibility because I think any time that you have your name on the products, one, you want to make sure that they're absolutely perfect. I want everything the customer experience, touches, tastes, smells, that is around Kendra Scott to be absolutely amazing. So I'm so engaged and involved in it. It adds this level of commitment, right? Because it is my name and I need to make sure it's perfect for them. But in addition to that, it's important for me to be able to inspire and show other women and young women that anything is possible. And I share my stories of failure. I share my stories of starting out in a difficult situation and overcoming these things, probably way more than I like to share successes, because I want others to see that they can do it too. And I say this all the time, if you can see her, you can be her. And I was able to see a few women, I think about Oprah Winfrey, Dolly Parton, women that went against the grain, that did things that were kind of like, that they didn't think that they could do. And they became these unbelievable dynamic, figures, right? The more of us that can get out there and inspire and show that it's possible, I think is important. And I take that job very seriously.
On the note of recovering from missteps, not every business decision is a slam dunk. Even well-intentioned changes can become the subject of scrutiny. So how do you handle this as the person in charge? And what have you learned from owning up to when customers maybe express their disappointment with the brand?
I actually love so much when customers tell us when they're not happy. I know that sounds like you wouldn't like that. I mean, I don't love it. But what I love about it is that I know about it, and I can then solve the problem for them. What I love today is that on social media, I can go, and I do read Instagram comments, y'all, so be kind, because I am very sensitive. But I do, if I hear something, if somebody had a bad experience, if something happened or they didn't get product shipped, I am calling our team. I am on this. I'm like, how did this happen? How do we make sure this never happens again? What do we do to make sure this customer becomes a customer for life and we turn around this experience for her? It's so important to me. And I think, you have to be able to listen. As leaders, you have to listen all the time. And the littlest thing, if it blooms, like fires up, right, and you hear something, maybe one person has said something, but there might be 50 people that had that same experience, but this one is the one that it came to the surface. So you've got to get into it. You can never be defensive. You can never be, it is 100% the customer is right. I know people always, but they are right. That is my boss. She signs and he signs my paycheck. So if my boss is not happy, we're going to get fired. They're going to stop buying from us. They're going to go to somewhere else. So the customer is my boss. And what do you do if your boss is unhappy? You're going to make sure they get happy real quick. And so that is our mentality at Kendra Scott. We all work for our customer. And everything he or she needs, her expectations, her experiences, and I'm saying her because there's just more hers, but he's, hers, they's, all the things. They need to know that we care and that we're there and we're listening and that we're proactive about it. So it's critically important to me.
You started Kendra Scott more than 20 years ago and have grown your team to roughly 200 employees in your home office and 2,600 in stores across the country. What have you learned about hiring the right people during that time?
I learned that you hire on heart. You guys are like, what? That's so woo-woo. No, I swear it's real. I've had so many gold-plated resumes that I've looked at that it's like, wow, they are all the things, the experience, the this, the that. And then I've gotten in front of them, and there's just something like, oh, they don't share our core values, that passion, that love, that kindness, that generosity, that glass overfilling optimism of, they just don't have that. But boy, this resume is sexy. Maybe I could overlook that I'm not having that good feeling. And every single time I have not listened to my gut, that I have not hired on core values, I have regretted it. So I think when we think about hiring, there are skills that you can teach. There are skills that you can teach people, but you cannot teach people on their heart. You cannot teach people their core values. You cannot teach caring and kindness. They either are that or they're not. And so what I recommend is not just you interview, make sure you have several people within your organization, especially the people that mirror the core values the best in your organization. Interview them because they can smell a rat. And they'll be able to tell right away if they don't share it. Also, make sure anyone you hire in a leadership role, that the people that are going to work for them, interview them. Because if they are bought in, if they are excited about the hire, then that will be a much more successful hire. Hiring should not come top down. The big boss likes this person and we're going to hire it. It should come bottom up. It should be a funnel up. You should have those people that are going to be excited about the leadership in your company and make them go through a very strenuous interview process. It shouldn't just be, here, it should be going to lunch, getting them in other environments. And then the biggest thing, and I think I can leave, and I tell this to my managers in stores. They're the CEOs of their stores, Kendra Scott stores. And I say, when you're interviewing, again, I actually sometimes don't want them to have experience in retail. I know that's shocking, because how everybody else is doing in retail, quite frankly, I think they're doing a lot of it wrong. So I don't want them to have those bad habits. I don't want them to come with me, well, this is how we do it at this brand and this brand. I'm like, no, we are very different at Kendra Scott. So part of me is, I want you to tell me, how did that person make you feel? That's a really easy way to know. When you sat with them, did you want to engage and continue in that conversation? Did you not want it to end? Did you want this interview to keep going? Because that's how a customer is going to feel when they walk in the store and they meet this person. So think about how that person makes you feel, and don't worry so much about that gold-plated resume.
Wonderful. So many applause-worthy moments here. So we have about 15 minutes left in our conversation today. Remember that we are opening audience Q&A, so if you have any questions, definitely throw them in the app. But we'll go ahead and dive into a few of them that are ready. So one of our questions here, how do you evolve and update your products to match current trends while preserving the identity of your brand?
That's a great one. Y'all, I now have pieces that they're considered vintage. That hurts, okay, when your name's on the brand, because that's saying I'm getting vintage, you know what I mean? It's okay, I got that. But I love it because you could pull a piece out of your jewelry box from 2008 or 2009, and you could buy a piece of Kendra Scott jewelry today, and you'd be like, oh, I could wear that with that piece. It becomes a collector's piece because we utilize unique shape for our brand. That was something that I thought was so important. Everyone was using the same shapes, and so I created unique shapes. One of them I'm wearing today, the first one. The very first custom shape that we ever did was our Danielle shape. And we copyrighted this shape, and we've shrunk her. She's now the Elisa, which you see all over. She's very popular. She's more popular than I am, by the way. Danielle's got a whole life of her own. But it was important to me that shape and then materials, we use amazing techniques to create very innovative materials, like putting mother of pearl behind a beautiful crystal glass. So it's called illusion, where you're looking through the glass and seeing the mother of pearl behind it. We're using all these innovative materials that become part of our brand, that are identifiable to our brand. So it's shape, it's color, it's filigree, it's how we work our metal, it's the texturing. And so there's these little bit of hints, right, that you can see in our brand to become identifiable. And that was important to me. And as we continue to evolve, we've created many new shapes. Every single shape you see is a custom designed shape that we design right here in our lab in Austin, Texas. We actually hand carve them out of wax, and we send them out to our cutters to have them cut. So that was super important to me. And I think that as you see it, we look at trends, but we also want to be able to think about how do we take the trends but keep them timeless, right? How can I give you a piece that you're going to love today and it's going to look hot with what's happening in fashion, but you could pull it out 10 years from now, or your daughter could pull it out 10 years from now, be like, this is so cool. I want to wear this. And that's what I think about. And I think about when I'm designing, again, you know, I want people to look good, obviously, but I want them to feel good. Like when they put this on, do they feel strong? Do they feel confident? Do they feel a little bit more powerful? Can they walk into that interview or that meeting and have a little bit more confidence? And I hope that our jewelry rubs that off on them in some magical way as well.
Yeah, so I've noticed a through line in our conversation is how much you care about the customer. So what are 3 things an entrepreneur should do to create a great connection with their consumer?
Okay, this is so important. So connection before transaction. If you write anything down, if you remember anything that I've said today, please remember those 3 words. Connection before transaction. The transaction will come. I promise you, it will come. It may not come in that moment, but it will come. If you and your team focus on connecting in an authentic and real way with your consumer, connecting with who they are, understanding their needs and their wants, listening to them, making them feel special and making them feel connected to your brand, they will leave that experience sharing it with everybody they know. So now you might have just gotten 10 or 50 more new customers right there, and they may go on later and shop e-com, but I promise you they're going to come back. When I shifted how we did things at Kendra Scott, and part of that was that shift of typical retail. What's your SBT? What's your UPT? It was all these, right? Like anyone that's worked in retail, you know. Yes, we have goals. Yes, we want to achieve things within Kendra Scott. But I just tell my team, connect. Connect, connect, connect. If you connect first and that person leaves happier than when they came through our doors, then you have made a successful transaction. And that is why our brand is doing things that other brands aren't able to do today, because that is the focus. And I think all companies, sometimes we get too granular in the data. Oh, we're so data-driven. And I know all of you, there are a lot of tech things going on here. But there's times for data, right? And there's times for us to start to remember we're human beings. And humans need personal touch. Humans need to feel touched, connected, loved. And you can't always do that through a screen or a robot. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. All right, another great question from the audience.
And now it's like, how do you use AI in your business? I had no.
Now back to the tech. It sounds like most of your successes came from overcoming the fear of failure. Was there a point in your career when you stopped having that fear?
No, I'm scared today still, you guys. I'm always scared. You know, when you fail in life, and I'm not just failed in business. I mean, I may or may not have been married a couple times, you know. Sometimes life throws you curveballs, right? It's not what you expect to happen. It's not what you want to happen. None of us go down the aisle and say I do with the idea of like the divorce. No, it just things happen in life, right? So I think, you know, when you go through these failures in your life, every single time though, I've come out on the other side and gone, that's why that happened. That's why I had to experience that, because I needed those tools, that information, that bridge to get me to the next place I was going. And if I hadn't had that failure or that mishap or that broken relationship, I wouldn't be with Thomas. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, you got to sometimes go through things. It's not ideal. It's not what we always plan, but that's always going to give you to a next brighter place if you just know. And it's okay. Hey, in those moments, cry. Get on the floor. Have your moment. Everybody, I'm an optimist. I mean, even an optimist has to break down and cry sometimes. But then pick yourself up and go, okay, now I'm going to learn from this. Because this is going to tell me something, because something awesome is waiting for me. And I just went through this hell, this hardship, because something truly great is behind that door of fear. Yeah.
Woo! Ooh, this is an interesting one. What did you do to show the world that you are a jewelry expert? How do you get that recognition? Everyone's got to start from somewhere.
How did I show the world? I didn't try to become a jewelry expert. I just wanted to make jewelry that was beautiful, that people were excited about, that felt good about. And I think when I just focused on the consumer, I stopped trying to beat like everybody else on like, oh, I'm going to do this. I just was focusing on what my customer wanted every day and made sure I was delivering that every single day. The reason we became an expert is because we cared so much about the customer. And at the end of the day, the customer became the ones that made me a jewelry expert. I didn't make myself the jewelry expert. They loved the design. They loved the creativity. They loved what we were doing. And I continued to listen and want to do more for them and more to excite them and more to make them thrilled about. And so every collection, I just think about, God, I just want to make this where they're going to be like, their jaws are going to drop. They're going to be so thrilled and excited. And I think in any business, that's how you become an expert. When you are able to really have that connection with your customer and listen to what they want and they need, they will make you an expert in whatever field it is that you're trying to be in.
Now this question,
Y'all are real nice. I like this group.
I feel like this question definitely came from a fellow business owner.
Okay.
How do you evaluate and find manufacturers that uphold the same values of quality?
So just like when you're hiring, okay, this is a really important thing. The question is, how do you find manufacturers that uphold your same values? This is huge. Any partner that you work with, they have to share your core values. Again, the gold-plated resume works the same way for any vendors, manufacturers, anybody that you're doing business with, anybody that will ever represent you, ever. So if that's a publicist, a lawyer, a whoever, they have to represent you and your core values. If they are not aligned with that, do not hire them. Do not put them on board. We've had manufacturers that I would go and visit, and they were not up to my standard of how they were treating their employees, what they were doing. And I basically said, you have 30 days to do all these things. And if you don't do those things, then we're not going to continue to utilize you as a manufacturer. It's as simple as that. And many times they'd push back, well, this is my granddaddy's business, and this is how we've done it for the last 50 years. And I'm like, well, it's time to grow up and get with the times, buddy, because how your granddaddy did it is not going to work for Kendra Scott and our company. So you need to do these things, and if you can't do them, once again, I'm going to move my manufacturing. And you have to be steadfast on those things. You can never, ever allow someone to treat people the way you said, I will never allow this in my organization. If somebody is doing it in theirs that you're partnering with, you are just as guilty as they are. So you have got to continue to hold them to the highest standards and fight for that every single day. And it doesn't always happen overnight, but all of our manufacturers, we have standards with every single person, and we ask them to exceed those. They have marks, KPIs that we ask. We ask for employee feedback. I want to hear directly from the employees what they're experiencing, what they need more of. And we're always striving to make sure that we're negotiating contracts that give them the best work environments and that they're as close to the brand as possible, even though they're not completely part of the brand itself.
I feel like this question, any boss, any founder, I'm sure contemplates this. When was the moment you decided to start delegating tasks and stop doing it all on your own?
Oh my gosh. You know, this is a really important one. There's a great book that I recommend. It's called Now Discover Your Strengths by Marcus Buckingham. If any of you have ever heard Marcus speak, he also has some great podcasts, but I saw him speak, and one of the things that he really talks about is understanding what you're good at, but more importantly, knowing what you're bad at. And any entrepreneur, I know we're all a little cocky, we can be a little arrogant sometimes, a little too confident. Let's be honest, we're not good at everything, okay? And the more that we know what we suck at, all right? The more we know that, and we can hire people that are absolutely dynamic and great at the things that we are not good at, the quicker you are going to see success. And so I surround myself with the most talented team on the planet. I am always looking for people to fill those holes that I know that I lack. Every morning I wake up and I'm running a company bigger than it was the night before. Can you imagine what that feels like? So I have to have people on my team that have been at companies that have far exceeded $1 billion and beyond, that they have walked that walk, that they have traversed some of these pitfalls that I know are ahead of us, that can help us avoid those things in the future. And I think it's so important for us as entrepreneurs to recognize those things. So thinking of it for me was really not just delegation. It was I was doing so many things, and so many things I wasn't good at. To this day, my accounting team will not unlock an Excel spreadsheet when they send it to me, okay? They know I'm not good at Excel. I never will be good at Excel, and I'm not going to try to be good at Excel. I'm going to let people that are great at Excel be great at Excel, okay? And they are amazing at it, and they love it, and building spreadsheets is like they get excited about it. I see it and I break out into hives, okay? Totally different. So I think when we can start to think about our team and bringing in people that share your core values but have other strengths than you have, and creating this winning team, and that is how you win, and that you have an aligned vision, that all of these amazing people on your team have an aligned vision, then watch out. Then you're gonna just start knocking off and being so successful. And the minute you can start to realize that you doing it all is actually hurting your company, not helping your company, will be the day you're gonna start to see amazing, magical things happen.
Now we have just about 1 minute left.
1 minute.
Last, down to the 60 seconds, I'm gonna close with a question of my own. You've heard a lot of advice about how to stand out as a business person over the years. What is the most overrated piece of advice you've ever heard? And then on the flip side, the most underrated piece of advice you want everyone to know?
Most overrated and underrated advice. Oh, God. Okay, overrated. There's a lot. I think, when I think about, I've been told so many things in my life that I was supposed to be, or how I should do things, or what typically was done, or what was normal in business. There is no normal in business. And people were trying to force me kind of into, this is how you do this. This is how it should be done. These are the steps you should take. And everyone's business in life is not the same. So not one set of rules is going to work for everyone. There's going to be nuggets of things that are going to work for you that may have worked for somebody else, and a lot of things that may have worked for somebody else that doesn't work. So remember, this is your path. It's yours alone. And to be a sponge, learn, listen, look at other companies you admire, but don't let a person or people tell you how you should do your path. Do it your own way, but again, taking that advice, being able to learn from it is great, but don't let anybody tell you how you should do something. Because again, if I had, I wouldn't be here. I was told not even to get into jewelry because it was too big of a market. It was absolutely ridiculous. All the things I was told over the years, were absolutely not true. I think underrated, and I think this one is important, is and a lot of times people say, well, it's not necessarily the people you surround yourself with. It's all you. It's like you've got to be the one to make these things happen, and I completely disagree. The people that surround you are your reflection of you. Who you decide to put yourself around, whether that is the friends that you have, the people that you hire within your organization, they are a reflection and a part of who you are. And it is not you, singular, as an entrepreneur, or I'm going to be able to fight the world on my own alone. You have to have an army of love and support to make it in this world. You have to have a village of people that that we will rely on with each other, that you'll be there for one another. So I think, a lot of times as an entrepreneur, it's like you against the world. And if you're going to put you up against the world, it's going to be a really, really, really hard life. So start to build your army. Start to build the people around you that can help be there for you, because then it's not just you. It's this army of believers that love you, believe in you, see you, and now you're unstoppable.
And that's our time. Thank you so much, Kendra, for this really energizing conversation. Thanks to everyone in the audience for your engagement. Have a great rest of your fest.
Have a great South by Southwest.